The maintenance bay hummed with the familiar sounds of weapons being cleaned and serviced. Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez sat cross-legged on a worn canvas mat, her attention completely absorbed in the disassembled components of a .338 Lapua Magnum rifle spread before her. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across the concrete floor, but Elena had positioned herself near the large bay doors where natural sunlight filtered in, providing better illumination for her meticulous work. She moved with the practiced ease of someone who had performed this ritual countless times. Her hands, steady and sure, guided the cleaning rod through the barrel with measured strokes. The other soldiers in the bay gave her space, not out of deference to her rank, but because of something else entirely, an aura of quiet competence that seemed to radiate from her small frame. Elena wasn't particularly tall, standing barely 5 feet 4 inches, and her slight build often led new recruits to underestimate her. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her olive complexion bore the subtle tan lines that came from years of outdoor operations. What set her apart weren't her physical characteristics, but rather the way she carried herself, with a confidence that seemed almost casual, as if she possessed knowledge that others could only dream of acquiring. The rifle she worked on was a precision instrument, a tool designed for one specific purpose. The .338 Lapua Magnum was renowned among military marksmen for its incredible accuracy and stopping power at extreme distances. It wasn't a weapon that found its way into the hands of ordinary soldiers. Only specialists, those with proven skills and unwavering nerves, were entrusted with such equipment. As Elena worked, she hummed softly under her breath, a habit that had developed during her early training days when the repetitive nature of weapons maintenance had nearly driven her to distraction. The tune was something her grandmother had sung to her as a child, back in the small Texas town where she'd grown up. Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else now, someone who had never seen the things Elena had seen, never done the things she had done. The bolt assembly required particular attention, and Elena examined each component with the thoroughness of a jeweler inspecting a precious stone. She had learned long ago that in her line of work, the difference between life and death often came down to the smallest details. A speck of dirt in the wrong place, a spring that had lost its tension, a scope that was off by even a fraction of a degree, any of these seemingly minor issues could prove catastrophic when the moment of truth arrived. Other soldiers came and went around her, some stopping to chat, others simply nodding acknowledgement as they passed. Elena was well liked among the enlisted personnel. She had a way of making even the newest recruits feel at ease, offering advice when asked but never forcing her opinions on others. Her easy smile and quick wit had earned her friends throughout the base, though few knew much about her background beyond the basics. What they did know was that she had served multiple tours in various theaters of operation. The patches on her uniform told part of the story, deployment ribbons that indicated service in some of the world's most dangerous regions. But patches and ribbons only revealed so much. They couldn't convey the weight of experience that Elena carried with her, the memories that sometimes surfaced in quiet moments like these, when her hands worked automatically and her mind was free to wander. The cleaning process was almost meditative for Elena. Each motion served a dual purpose, maintaining the weapon's functionality while also providing a sense of order and control in a world that often seemed chaotic and unpredictable. She had developed her own rhythm over the years, a sequence of steps that she followed religiously, regardless of circumstances. As she worked on the trigger mechanism, Elena's thoughts drifted to her early days in the military. She had enlisted straight out of high school, driven by a combination of patriotic duty and a desire to escape the limitations of small-town life. Her recruiter had been impressed by her scores on the aptitude tests, particularly those measuring spatial reasoning and hand-eye coordination. These skills, he had explained, made her an ideal candidate for specialized training programs. Basic training had been challenging but manageable. Elena had always been athletic, and the physical demands hadn't overwhelmed her the way they had some of her fellow recruits. What had set her apart was her ability to remain calm under pressure, to think clearly when chaos erupted around her. Her instructors had noticed this quality early on, making notes in her file that would later influence her career path. The transition from basic infantry training to specialized marksmanship instruction had happened gradually. Elena had shown exceptional aptitude during standard rifle qualification, consistently achieving perfect or near-perfect scores even under adverse conditions. Her shooting instructor, a grizzled veteran with 30 years of experience, had recommended her for advanced training after observing her performance during a particularly challenging night exercise. That recommendation had changed everything, though Elena hadn't realized it at the time. Advanced marksmanship training was a different world entirely, one where precision was measured in fractions of inches rather than center mass hits. The students who made it through the program emerged as elite marksmen, capable of engaging targets at distances that would challenge even experienced hunters. The training had been intensive, covering everything from ballistics calculations to environmental factors that could affect bullet trajectory. Elena had thrown herself into the coursework with characteristic determination, spending extra hours on the range and studying ballistics tables until she could recite them from memory. Her instructors had been pleased with her progress, though they maintained the reserved demeanor that was typical of special operations personnel. It was during this period that Elena first encountered the .338 Lapua Magnum. The weapon had impressed her immediately. Its weight and balance spoke of serious engineering, and the precision it was capable of achieving seemed almost magical. Her first shots with the rifle had been revealing, not just of the weapon's capabilities, but of her own potential as a marksman. The memory of that first successful long-range shot remained vivid in Elena's mind. The target had been positioned at 800 meters, barely visible through the scope even at maximum magnification. The wind had been gusting unpredictably, and the range instructor had warned the students that conditions were less than ideal for precision shooting. Most of her classmates had struggled to achieve even approximate hits at that distance, but Elena's shot had found its mark with devastating accuracy. That moment had marked a turning point in her military career. Word of her exceptional shooting ability had spread through the training command, eventually reaching the attention of units that specialized in long-range reconnaissance and elimination. The recruitment process for these units was secretive and highly selective, involving psychological evaluations and background investigations that went far beyond standard military procedures. Elena had never actively sought out such opportunities, but when they presented themselves, she had accepted the challenge. The additional training had pushed her to limits she hadn't known existed, both physically and mentally. She learned to operate independently for extended periods, to make life-and-death decisions without the benefit of immediate support or supervision. The specialized unit she eventually joined operated under a veil of secrecy that extended to their very existence. Their missions were classified at levels that required special clearances, and the details of their operations were compartmentalized to ensure security. Elena found herself part of a small, elite group of soldiers whose skills were called upon only when conventional approaches had failed or were deemed inappropriate. Her fellow specialists came from various backgrounds, but they all shared certain characteristics. They were patient, methodical, and capable of maintaining focus for extended periods under extremely stressful conditions. Most importantly, they possessed the mental fortitude necessary to take human life at great distances, often targeting individuals who had no idea they were being watched. The psychological aspects of this work were perhaps the most challenging. Elena had received extensive counseling and training to help her cope with the unique stresses of her role. The military understood that soldiers who operated in this capacity faced mental health challenges that differed significantly from those experienced by conventional combat troops. Unlike infantry soldiers who engaged the enemy in direct firefights, snipers operated in a more solitary environment. They spent long hours in concealment, observing targets through high-powered optics, learning personal details about individuals they would eventually kill. This intimate knowledge of their targets could create psychological complications that the military worked hard to address through training and support programs. Elena had adapted to these challenges better than most. Her natural ability to compartmentalize emotions and focus on the technical aspects of her job had served her well. She approached each mission with professional detachment, viewing her targets not as individuals with families and aspirations, but as objectives to be neutralized in service of larger strategic goals. This mental discipline had been essential during her first deployment, when theoretical training gave way to real-world operations. The transition from range targets to human beings had been jarring, despite all the preparation she had received. The first time she had squeezed the trigger with a living person in her crosshairs, Elena had experienced a moment of profound realization about the nature of her chosen profession. But she had adapted, as soldiers do. Each subsequent mission had become easier from a psychological standpoint, though the technical challenges often increased in complexity. Elena developed a reputation for reliability among her superiors, someone who could be counted on to complete difficult assignments without requiring extensive oversight or support. Her deployment record reflected this trust. Elena had served in various theaters where precision elimination capabilities were needed, from urban environments where civilian casualties had to be avoided at all costs, to remote wilderness areas where enemy leadership attempted to hide from conventional forces. Each environment had presented unique challenges that had tested different aspects of her training and abilities. The missions themselves remained classified, their details locked away in files that would probably never see the light of day. But the results spoke for themselves in ways that only Elena and her immediate superiors understood. Strategic objectives had been achieved, enemy operations had been disrupted, and friendly forces had been protected from threats that might otherwise have caused significant casualties. Now, as Elena continued her meticulous maintenance routine in the quiet of the weapons bay, those memories remained largely private. Her fellow soldiers knew her as a competent specialist, someone who could be relied upon to maintain her equipment properly and perform her duties without complaint. They didn't know about the contents of a particular file that rested in a secure cabinet in the base commander's office, a file that contained information that would have shocked even the most experienced combat veterans. The afternoon sun was beginning to fade as Elena reassembled the final components of the rifle. Each piece clicked into place with the satisfying precision of well-engineered machinery. She had performed this task so many times that her hands seemed to work independently of conscious thought, muscle memory guiding each motion with practiced efficiency. As she completed the assembly process, Elena conducted a final inspection, checking the weapon's operation through a series of function tests. The bolt moved smoothly through its cycle, the trigger broke cleanly at exactly the right pressure, and the scope tracking remained true to its previous zero. Everything was as it should be, ready for whatever missions might come. The maintenance bay was beginning to empty as other soldiers completed their own tasks and moved on to evening duties or recreational activities. Elena took her time packing away her cleaning supplies, following the same methodical approach that characterized everything she did. There was something comforting about these routines, a sense of order and predictability that provided stability in an otherwise uncertain profession. As she prepared to secure the rifle in its designated storage location, Elena reflected on how her life had evolved since those early days of basic training. She had traveled to places she had never imagined visiting, faced challenges that had tested every aspect of her character, and developed skills that few people possessed. The journey had been difficult at times, but she felt a sense of satisfaction in knowing that her contributions had made a difference, even if the full scope of that difference would never be publicly acknowledged. The rifle now clean and properly maintained, Elena stood and stretched, working out the kinks that had developed from sitting on the floor for several hours. Tomorrow would bring new responsibilities and challenges, but, for now, she was content to have completed another small but important task in the ongoing maintenance of military readiness. As she walked toward the weapons storage area, Elena had no way of knowing that her quiet routine was about to be dramatically interrupted. The file containing her service record was about to be reviewed by someone with the authority to ask uncomfortable questions, someone whose curiosity about personnel under his command was legendary throughout the base. General Marcus Hayes had a reputation for taking personal interest in the soldiers serving under his command, particularly those whose records contained elements that sparked his professional curiosity. Elena's file had recently come to his attention through routine administrative channels, and what he had read there had raised questions that demanded answers. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change Elena's military career forever, though she remained blissfully unaware as she completed her evening duties and prepared for what she expected to be just another routine day in her service to her country. General Marcus Hayes stood at the window of his office, watching the morning training exercises unfold on the parade ground below. His weathered hands clasped behind his back, the general presented an imposing figure even in stillness. At 58, he had spent nearly 4 decades in military service, rising through the ranks based on a combination of tactical brilliance, unwavering integrity, and an almost supernatural ability to read the soldiers under his command. The general's office reflected his personality, functional, organized, and devoid of unnecessary decoration. Military commendations lined one wall, telling the story of a distinguished career that had taken him to every major conflict zone of the past 30 years. His desk, a massive oak piece that had served previous commanders, was covered with reports, personnel files, and strategic documents that required his immediate attention. This particular morning, however, one file commanded more of his attention than all the others combined. Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez's service record lay open before him, its contents having kept him awake for most of the previous night. What he had read there challenged his understanding of what was possible, even for the most exceptional soldiers. Hayes had encountered many remarkable individuals during his long career. He had commanded special operations units, worked alongside intelligence operatives, and supervised training programs that produced some of the military's most elite personnel. But the file before him described accomplishments that bordered on the extraordinary, achievements that seemed almost too remarkable to be authentic. The documentation was thorough and properly verified, bearing the signatures and classifications that indicated legitimate military operations. Hayes had spent considerable time that morning verifying the authenticity of the records through secure channels, contacting former commanders and reviewing mission reports that corroborated the information in Elena's file. Everything checked out, yet the implications remained staggering. According to the classified records, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had been involved in operations that resulted in the elimination of high-value targets across multiple theaters of operation. The numbers alone were impressive enough to warrant attention, but what truly set her apart was the consistency of success and the extreme difficulty of many assignments she had completed. Hayes had seen the records of other elite marksmen, soldiers whose abilities had earned them legendary status within special operations communities. Even among this exclusive group, Elena's achievements stood out. The distances involved in some of her confirmed eliminations pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible with current technology and training methods. More intriguing still were the circumstances surrounding many of these operations. Elena had repeatedly been assigned to missions that other specialists had been unable to complete, situations where environmental conditions, target security, or tactical constraints had made success appear unlikely. Yet time and again, she had delivered results that exceeded all reasonable expectations. The general's military mind appreciated the strategic value of such capabilities. In modern warfare, the ability to eliminate specific threats with surgical precision could prevent conflicts from escalating, protect civilian populations, and save countless lives on both sides. Elena's skills represented a strategic asset that was both rare and invaluable. But Hayes was also troubled by certain aspects of what he had read. The psychological evaluations in Elena's file painted a picture of someone who had adapted perhaps too well to the unique stresses of her profession. While her mental health assessments remained within normal parameters, there were subtle indicators that suggested a level of detachment that concerned the general. This concern wasn't based on any specific incidents or behavioral problems. Elena's conduct record was exemplary, and her relationships with fellow soldiers appeared healthy and appropriate. Rather, it was the accumulation of small details in her psychological profiles that suggested someone who had learned to compartmentalize extreme experiences in ways that might not be entirely healthy in the long term. Hayes understood the necessity of such psychological adaptations. Soldiers who worked in Elena's specialty had to develop mental mechanisms that allowed them to function effectively while taking human life at great distances. The military had studied this phenomenon extensively, developing support programs and monitoring procedures designed to identify potential problems before they became critical. Yet reading through Elena's record, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that there were aspects of her experience that hadn't been fully captured in the official documentation. The missions were described in clinical, tactical language that conveyed the facts but missed the human elements that made such accomplishments possible. He wanted to understand not just what she had done, but how she had managed to do it consistently over an extended period. The decision to meet with Elena personally had been easy to make, but Hayes recognized that such encounters could be delicate. Soldiers who operated at her level were often wary of attention from senior officers, particularly when that attention involved detailed review of classified activities. Elena had good reason to be protective of information about her service, and Hayes would need to approach the conversation carefully. His aide knocked on the door, interrupting the general's contemplation. "Sir, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez is here for her appointment." Hayes straightened his uniform and walked to his desk, closing Elena's file and placing it in a position where it would be visible but not obviously the focus of their meeting.
Send her in. Elena entered with the precise bearing that characterized professional soldiers.
Her uniform was immaculate, her posture perfect, and her expression appropriately respectful but not servile. Hayes had developed an ability to read soldiers quickly, and his initial impression was favorable.
Whatever extraordinary capabilities Elena possessed, they hadn't affected her fundamental professionalism or military bearing.
Staff Sergeant Rodriguez reporting as ordered, sir, she stated, offering a crisp salute. Hayes returned the salute and gestured toward a chair positioned in front of his desk.
Please, have a seat, Sergeant. I appreciate you taking time from your duties to meet with me. As Elena settled into the chair, Hayes studied her more carefully.
She appeared completely at ease, showing none of the nervousness that often characterized soldiers summoned for meetings with senior officers. Her dark eyes were alert and intelligent, taking in details of the office without appearing to conduct surveillance. Everything about her demeanor suggested competence and confidence. I hope you don't mind my curiosity about your service record, Hayes began, adopting a conversational tone that he hoped would put Elena at ease. I make it a point to familiarize myself with the personnel under my command, particularly those with specialized skills.
Elena nodded politely. Of course, sir. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Hayes appreciated her directness.
Some soldiers in her position might have been evasive or overly cautious about discussing classified activities. Elena's willingness to engage suggested either supreme confidence in her security clearances or genuine openness about her service. Your marksmanship scores are quite impressive, Hayes continued, opening Elena's file and glancing at the standardized test results that formed part of her official record. These scores, while excellent, represented only the tip of the iceberg regarding her actual capabilities.
Tell me about your training background. How did you develop such exceptional shooting skills? Elena's response was measured and professional. I showed aptitude during basic training, sir.
My instructors recommended me for advanced marksmanship programs, and I was selected for specialized training based on performance evaluations and psychological assessments.
Hayes nodded, appreciating the way Elena stuck to facts without embellishment.
Her answer was accurate as far as it went, but it also represented a careful selection of information that avoided any discussion of classified programs or operations. I've had the opportunity to review some of your deployment records, Hayes continued, watching Elena's face carefully for any change in expression.
You've served in some challenging environments.
Yes, sir. I've been fortunate to serve where my skills were needed.
The word fortunate struck Hayes as an interesting choice. Most soldiers would have described deployments to dangerous areas as duties or obligations rather than opportunities.
Elena's characterization suggested someone who viewed difficult assignments as chances to excel rather than hardships to endure. Your supervisors consistently rate your performance as exceptional, Hayes observed, turning pages in the file. That's unusual consistency across multiple commands and deployment locations. Elena remained composed, though Hayes detected a slight tension in her posture that hadn't been present earlier. I try to maintain high standards regardless of circumstances, sir. Hayes decided to probe a bit deeper, testing Elena's comfort level with more direct questions about her service. Your record indicates involvement in operations requiring extreme precision under challenging conditions.
That must require significant mental discipline.
Yes, sir. The training programs emphasize psychological preparation as much as technical skills.
Hayes was struck by Elena's ability to acknowledge the nature of her work without providing any specific details that might compromise operational security.
She walked the line between openness and discretion with impressive skill, suggesting extensive training in dealing with inquiries about classified activities. I'm curious about the personal aspects of such service, Hayes continued, shifting his approach slightly.
How do you maintain perspective when your work involves life and death decisions at great distances? For the first time since entering his office, Elena hesitated before responding.
Hayes could see her carefully considering her words, weighing how much personal insight to share with a superior officer she had never met before. The training helps establish proper mental frameworks, sir. We learn to focus on mission objectives and strategic outcomes rather than other considerations.
Hayes nodded, recognizing that Elena had just provided him with significant insight into her psychological adaptation to her role.
Her careful phrasing suggested awareness of the moral and emotional complexities involved in her work, while her emphasis on training indicated reliance on institutional support systems.
That makes sense, Hayes replied, closing the file and leaning back in his chair.
The military invests considerable resources in preparing soldiers for specialized roles.
Your record suggests those investments have paid off admirably. Elena relaxed slightly, perhaps interpreting Hayes's comment as an indication that their meeting was concluding satisfactorily.
But the general had more ground to cover before he would be satisfied with his understanding of the remarkable soldier sitting across from him. I notice you've maintained your marksmanship skills consistently across multiple deployments, Hayes observed, reopening the file to a page containing training scores.
That's impressive dedication to professional development. Skill degradation is a constant concern in precision work, sir. Regular practice is essential.
Hayes appreciated the matter-of-fact way Elena discussed the technical aspects of her profession. There was no bravado or false modesty in her responses, just straightforward acknowledgement of professional requirements and personal discipline.
Your current assignment involves training responsibilities as well as operational duties, Hayes noted, referring to Elena's role in weapons maintenance and instruction. How do you balance those different aspects of your service? Elena seemed more comfortable discussing her current duties than her deployment history.
The training role helps maintain my own skills while contributing to overall unit readiness, sir.
Teaching others reinforces fundamental principles. Hayes found this perspective interesting. Many elite soldiers struggled with transition to training roles, finding instruction duties less satisfying than operational assignments.
Elena's positive attitude toward teaching suggested maturity and understanding of how individual skills could contribute to broader military objectives. Your fellow soldiers speak highly of your instructional abilities, Hayes commented, though he hadn't actually solicited such opinions. He was curious to see how Elena would respond to praise from her peers.
I'm glad to hear that, sir. Building capability across the unit benefits everyone. Again, Hayes was struck by Elena's focus on collective rather than individual success.
This attitude was exactly what the military hoped to develop in its personnel, but it was particularly valuable in someone whose individual capabilities were as exceptional as Elena's appeared to be. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Hayes exploring various aspects of Elena's service and personal philosophy. Throughout their discussion, Elena maintained her professional demeanor while providing insights that helped the general understand how someone could achieve and maintain the level of performance documented in her classified record. What emerged was a picture of a soldier who had found ways to excel within the military system while maintaining psychological balance and professional integrity. Elena's approach to her role seemed to involve careful mental discipline combined with genuine commitment to military objectives and unit cohesion. As their meeting drew toward a close, Hayes found himself impressed not just by Elena's apparent capabilities, but by her character and professionalism. Whatever extraordinary things she had accomplished during her deployments, she had managed to do so while remaining fundamentally grounded and connected to military values and traditions. "Thank you for your time, Sergeant Rodriguez," Hayes said, standing to signal the end of their meeting. "I appreciate your candor and your continued service to our unit." Elena rose and came to attention.
"Thank you, sir. Is there anything else you need from me?"
Hayes paused, considering whether to reveal the full extent of his knowledge about Elena's operational history. He decided to save that conversation for another time, when he had had more opportunity to process what he had learned during their initial meeting.
"Not at this time," he replied. "Please continue with your assigned duties."
Elena saluted and turned to leave, but Hayes called her name before she reached the door. "Sergeant Rodriguez, I want you to know that your contributions to our military's capabilities are recognized and valued, even when they can't be publicly acknowledged." Elena turned back, and, for the first time during their meeting, Hayes saw something other than professional composure in her expression. There was a moment of genuine surprise, followed by what might have been gratitude or relief.
Thank you, sir. That means a great deal. After Elena left, Hayes returned to his desk and reopened her file. The conversation had answered some of his questions while raising others. He now had a better understanding of the person behind the remarkable record, but he was more curious than ever about the specific details of her operational achievements. The general's next step would involve reaching out to Elena's former commanders and operational supervisors. He wanted to understand not just what she had accomplished, but how those accomplishments had been possible and what they might mean for future military operations. What Hayes didn't yet realize was that his investigation into Elena's background was about to uncover information that would challenge his understanding of what individual soldiers could achieve under the right circumstances. The file on his desk contained just the beginning of a story that was far more remarkable than even his experienced military mind could have imagined. General Hayes spent the next 3 days making discreet inquiries through secure military channels. Each conversation he conducted revealed additional layers to Elena Rodriguez's remarkable service record, painting a picture that grew more extraordinary with every detail he uncovered. Former commanders spoke in hushed tones about operations they couldn't discuss in detail, using carefully chosen words that conveyed significance without violating classification protocols. Colonel Patricia Morrison, Elena's former commanding officer during a deployment in the Middle East, had been particularly enlightening during their encrypted video conference. Morrison was a career intelligence officer with 25 years of experience managing complex operations in hostile environments. Her reputation for unvarnished honesty made her assessment particularly valuable. "General, I've worked with some exceptional operators over the years," Morrison had said, her expression serious through the secure connection. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez represents a completely different category of capability. The missions we assigned her bordered on the impossible, yet she consistently delivered results that exceeded our most optimistic projections. When Hayes had pressed for specifics, Morrison had referred him to classified mission reports that required special authorization to access. The process of obtaining these documents had taken additional time, but the contents had proven worth the wait. Reading through the detailed operational accounts, Hayes began to understand why Elena's superiors had spoken with such obvious respect and amazement. One particular mission report stood out among the rest. The operation had taken place in a mountainous region where enemy forces had established a heavily fortified compound in terrain that made conventional assault extremely costly. Intelligence indicated that a high-value target was planning to meet with other enemy leaders at the location, presenting a rare opportunity to eliminate multiple threats simultaneously. Previous attempts to neutralize the target had failed due to the compound's elevation and the sophisticated security measures protecting it. The facility was positioned on a rocky outcrop that provided excellent observation capabilities in all directions, making covert approach nearly impossible. Enemy sentries maintained constant surveillance using both electronic and visual methods, creating overlapping fields of coverage that seemed to eliminate any potential sniper positions. The tactical challenge was further complicated by environmental factors that would affect any long-range engagement. The compound sat at an elevation that created unpredictable wind patterns, while temperature variations between day and night created atmospheric conditions that could dramatically affect bullet trajectory over extreme distances. Multiple special operations units had evaluated the target and concluded that a successful precision elimination would require positioning within 800 meters of the compound. However, achieving such proximity without detection was deemed impossible given the enemy's security arrangements and the open terrain surrounding their position. Elena had been brought in after conventional approaches had been exhausted. Her mission briefing had been stark in its assessment of the challenges involved. The only viable shooting position was located approximately 1,400 meters from the target area, well beyond the effective range that most marksmen could achieve under ideal conditions. Environmental factors would make the shot even more difficult, with winds that could shift unpredictably and atmospheric density that would affect bullet behavior in complex ways. The operational plan called for Elena to establish her position during darkness, then maintain concealment for up to 72 hours while waiting for the target to appear. She would have only one opportunity to take the shot, as enemy response to any missed attempt would be swift and overwhelming. Hayes found himself shaking his head as he read through the mission parameters.
1,400 meters represented a distance that pushed the absolute limits of precision rifle capabilities, even under controlled conditions.
Adding environmental stress, time pressure, and the knowledge that failure could result in significant strategic consequences made the assignment appear almost suicidal.
Yet Elena had not only accepted the mission but had requested additional preparation time to study atmospheric conditions and develop detailed ballistic calculations for the extreme range involved. Her pre-mission planning had been exhaustive, involving consultation with meteorologists, ballistics experts, and equipment specialists who helped optimize her rifle and ammunition for the specific conditions she would encounter. The mission execution had been flawless.
Elena had infiltrated to her firing position without detection, established concealment that allowed her to remain unobserved for 2 full days while maintaining visual contact with the target area.
When the high-value targets finally appeared at the compound, she had made the shot on her first attempt, eliminating the primary objective and creating enough chaos to disrupt the entire enemy leadership meeting. The ballistics analysis conducted afterward had confirmed what many observers had found difficult to believe. Elena's bullet had traveled 1,387 meters through complex atmospheric conditions, maintaining sufficient accuracy to achieve a precise hit on a human-sized target. The mathematical calculations required to account for all the variables involved would have challenged experienced artillery officers, yet Elena had made the necessary adjustments instinctively during the brief window when the shot became available. This mission report was remarkable enough on its own, but it represented just one example among dozens of similar achievements documented in Elena's classified record. Other operations had presented different but equally challenging technical problems, from extreme weather conditions to urban environments where civilian safety required absolute precision. Hayes had also discovered that Elena's capabilities had been recognized at the highest levels of military command. Several mission reports contained marginal notes indicating that successful completion had influenced broader strategic decisions. In at least 3 documented cases, Elena's ability to eliminate specific targets had prevented larger military operations that would have resulted in significant casualties and international complications. The strategic value of such capabilities was enormous. Modern military doctrine increasingly emphasized precision over overwhelming force, recognizing that surgical strikes could achieve objectives while minimizing collateral damage and political consequences. Elena represented the extreme end of this capability spectrum, someone whose individual skills could influence outcomes that would otherwise require extensive resources and planning. But Hayes was also beginning to understand why Elena's record had been so carefully protected and compartmentalized. The existence of soldiers with such extreme capabilities raised sensitive questions about military doctrine and international law. Elena's achievements pushed boundaries that military leadership preferred to keep confidential, both for operational security reasons and to avoid complicated political discussions about the ethics of precision elimination. His investigation had also revealed the extensive support structure that enabled Elena's success. Behind each documented mission was a team of specialists who provided intelligence, equipment modification, logistical support, and post-mission analysis. Elena's individual skills were remarkable, but they functioned within a sophisticated system designed to maximize effectiveness while maintaining plausible deniability. The psychological profile information Hayes had obtained painted a complex picture of how Elena had adapted to the unique stresses of her role. Multiple evaluations emphasized her unusual ability to maintain emotional equilibrium while operating under extreme pressure. Psychologists noted that she appeared to process the moral implications of her work through intellectual frameworks that allowed her to function effectively without developing the psychological problems that often affected soldiers in similar roles. Yet there were subtle indications in her psychological assessments that concerned the mental health professionals who monitored her condition. Elena's ability to compartmentalize extreme experiences appeared to be extraordinarily well developed, perhaps too well developed for optimal long-term psychological health. Several evaluators had noted recommendations for continued monitoring and regular counseling sessions to ensure that her adaptive mechanisms remained healthy. Hayes found this aspect of Elena's record particularly troubling. The military had a responsibility to protect the psychological welfare of all personnel, but soldiers like Elena presented unique challenges. Their specialized roles required mental adaptations that could be both necessary for mission success and potentially harmful for individual well-being.
As he continued his investigation, Hayes began to develop a clearer understanding of why Elena had been assigned to her current position. Rather than being a routine assignment, her transfer to the training base appeared to be a carefully planned transition designed to give her respite from operational deployments while maintaining her skills and contributing to broader military capabilities. This revelation led Hayes to examine Elena's current activities more carefully. Her role in weapons maintenance and marksmanship instruction was providing valuable contributions to unit readiness, but it also represented significant underutilization of exceptional capabilities. Hayes began to consider whether there might be ways to better leverage Elena's skills while respecting the apparent need for operational rest. The general's investigation had also uncovered information about Elena's personal life and background that helped explain her remarkable professional achievements. Her childhood in small-town Texas had been marked by challenges that developed resilience and self-reliance. Her family had faced economic difficulties that required Elena to assume adult responsibilities at an early age, fostering maturity and determination that served her well in military service. Educational records showed that Elena had excelled academically despite limited resources, particularly in mathematics and physics courses that later proved relevant to ballistics calculations. Her teachers had noted exceptional focus and analytical abilities that allowed her to master complex concepts with minimal instruction. Athletic participation had provided additional preparation for military service. Elena had competed in shooting sports during high school, developing fundamental marksmanship skills that military training later refined and expanded. Her coaches had noted not just technical proficiency but also mental toughness that allowed her to perform under competitive pressure. Family background information revealed a tradition of military service that had influenced Elena's decision to enlist. Her grandfather had served in World War II, and several uncles had military experience that exposed Elena to military culture and values from an early age. This background had provided her with realistic expectations about military life and strong motivation to excel in service to her country. The investigation was also revealing institutional responses to Elena's exceptional capabilities. Military leadership had recognized the rarity of her skills and had made conscious decisions to protect and develop her abilities through careful assignment management and specialized training opportunities. Elena's career path had been shaped by senior officers who understood the strategic value of her capabilities and worked to maximize their effectiveness. Yet Hayes was also discovering evidence of ongoing debates within military leadership about how best to utilize soldiers with Elena's exceptional abilities. Some officials favored continued operational deployment, arguing that her skills were too valuable to be wasted on routine assignments. Others advocated for transition to training and development roles, believing that her knowledge and experience could benefit larger numbers of personnel. These debates reflected broader questions about military talent management and the ethical implications of requiring individuals to repeatedly undertake extremely dangerous assignments. Elena's record raised uncomfortable questions about the sustainability of careers built on such extreme operational requirements and the military's responsibility to protect personnel who consistently volunteered for the most dangerous missions. As his investigation continued, Hayes found himself developing deep respect for Elena's professionalism and dedication. Everything he learned reinforced his initial impression of her character while revealing the extraordinary depth of her capabilities and experience. Elena represented the best aspects of military service, exceptional skill combined with unwavering commitment to duty and genuine concern for fellow soldiers. But Hayes was also becoming convinced that Elena's current assignment, while valuable, didn't fully utilize her unique capabilities. He began to consider options for roles that might better leverage her skills while respecting any personal or institutional preferences for reduced operational tempo. The general's investigation was approaching a critical juncture. He had gathered sufficient information to understand Elena's remarkable background and capabilities, but he still needed to determine how best to proceed with this knowledge. The decisions he made in the coming days would significantly impact Elena's future military career and potentially influence broader military policies regarding the management of exceptional personnel. What Hayes didn't yet realize was that his investigation had already attracted attention from other military leaders who had their own interests in Elena's capabilities and future assignments. Forces were beginning to align that would soon present Elena with opportunities and challenges that would test her adaptability in entirely new ways.
The stage was set for developments that would transform Elena's military career and reveal even more extraordinary aspects of her service that Hayes had not yet discovered. The remarkable soldier who quietly maintained her rifle each afternoon was about to become the center of high-level discussions that would reshape her future in ways she could never have anticipated. The secure conference room in the Pentagon was filled with an unusual collection of military officials, intelligence personnel, and civilian consultants. General Hayes had been summoned to Washington 3 days after completing his investigation into Elena Rodriguez's service record, though the connection between his inquiries and this high-level meeting hadn't been immediately apparent. Admiral Jennifer Walsh, a stern woman in her 50s who oversaw Special Operations personnel policy, called the meeting to order with characteristic directness. "Gentlemen and ladies, we're here to discuss the optimization of highly specialized human assets within our current force structure. General Hayes, your recent personnel review has provided timely insight into issues we've been grappling with at the strategic level." Hayes nodded, beginning to understand that his investigation into Elena had intersected with broader policy discussions taking place at the highest levels of military command. The presence of officials from multiple services and agencies suggested that Elena's case was being viewed as representative of larger institutional challenges. "Our analysis indicates that we currently have approximately 24 personnel with capabilities similar to those documented in Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's record," continued Admiral Walsh. "These individuals represent strategic assets that require careful management to maximize their effectiveness while ensuring their long-term viability." Colonel Harrison Beck, a Marine Corps officer Hayes recognized from Special Operations Planning, leaned forward in his chair. "The question we're facing is whether our current approach to managing these exceptional personnel is sustainable. The operational tempo required to maintain their skills and justify the investment in their training may be creating psychological and physical stress that threatens their long-term effectiveness." Hayes was surprised to learn that Elena's situation was part of a broader pattern affecting multiple service members across different branches. The military had apparently been tracking soldiers with exceptional capabilities and studying the challenges involved in optimizing their contributions while protecting their welfare. Dr. Sarah Chen, a civilian psychologist who specialized in military personnel management, presented findings from a comprehensive study of elite military specialists. "Our research indicates that individuals with extreme capabilities in precision operations often develop adaptive mechanisms that allow them to function effectively in the short term but may create psychological vulnerabilities over extended periods." The presentation included statistical analysis showing higher than average rates of stress-related issues among personnel who had sustained high-level operational performance over multiple deployment cycles. Elena's psychological profiles were cited as examples of both optimal adaptation and potential warning signs that required continued monitoring. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez represents something of an anomaly in our data," Dr. Chen continued. "Her psychological stability has remained consistently within normal parameters despite operational exposure that typically produces measurable stress indicators. This suggests either exceptional natural resilience or adaptive mechanisms that we don't fully understand." Hayes found himself viewing Elena's situation in an entirely new context. Rather than being an isolated case of exceptional performance, she was part of a carefully studied population that was helping military leadership understand the limits and possibilities of human performance under extreme conditions. General Patricia Morrison, Elena's former commander, had also been invited to participate in the discussion via secure video conference. Her first-hand experience with Elena's capabilities provided operational perspective that complemented the statistical analysis. "What sets Sergeant Rodriguez apart isn't just her technical proficiency," Morrison explained to the assembled officials. "She possesses an intuitive understanding of complex ballistic calculations that allows her to make accurate shots under conditions that would challenge computer modeling systems. More importantly, she maintains this capability consistently across different environments and stress levels." Admiral Walsh nodded thoughtfully. "That consistency is what makes her case particularly interesting from a strategic standpoint. Most exceptional performers have peak capabilities that diminish under certain conditions. Rodriguez appears to maintain optimal performance regardless of external factors." The discussion shifted to broader questions about how the military should manage personnel with such exceptional capabilities. Hayes learned that there was ongoing debate about whether these individuals should be concentrated in specialized units or distributed across conventional forces to maximize their impact on overall military readiness.
The traditional approach has been to create elite units that concentrate exceptional talent, explained Colonel Beck.
But recent operational analysis suggests that embedding these individuals within conventional forces might provide greater strategic benefit by elevating overall unit performance. This perspective was challenged by intelligence officials who argued that exceptional capabilities were most effective when applied to specific high-value missions that conventional forces couldn't accomplish. The debate reflected fundamental disagreements about military doctrine and resource allocation that had implications far beyond Elena's individual case.
Dr. Chen presented research on career sustainability for personnel with exceptional capabilities.
Our longitudinal studies indicate that individuals like Sergeant Rodriguez face unique challenges in transitioning to conventional military roles after extended periods of specialized operations. The psychological adaptations that enable their exceptional performance can make adjustment to routine military activities difficult. Hayes found this information particularly relevant to Elena's current situation. Her assignment to training and maintenance duties had been presented as routine personnel management, but it was apparently part of a deliberate strategy to help exceptional performers transition away from high-stress operational roles while maintaining their connection to military service. "We're essentially conducting an experiment in career management," admitted Admiral Walsh. "Rodriguez and others like her are helping us determine whether exceptional personnel can successfully transition to roles that utilize their experience without requiring continued exposure to extreme operational stress." The meeting participants discussed various options for optimizing the contributions of exceptional personnel while protecting their long-term welfare. Some proposals involved rotating assignments between operational and training roles, while others suggested creating new types of positions that would leverage specialized skills in non-operational contexts. Hayes was asked to provide his assessment of Elena's current adjustment and potential for continued service in various roles. His observations during their interview, combined with information gathered during his investigation, suggested that Elena had adapted well to her current assignment while maintaining readiness for operational deployment if required. Sergeant Rodriguez appears to have achieved an optimal balance between utilizing her exceptional skills and maintaining psychological equilibrium, Hayes reported. Her current role allows her to contribute to unit readiness while providing respite from operational stress. However, there may be opportunities to better leverage her capabilities through expanded training responsibilities or specialized consultation roles. The discussion revealed that Elena's case was being closely monitored as a test case for broader policy decisions affecting all personnel with exceptional capabilities. The success or failure of her transition to non-operational duties would influence how similar cases were managed in the future. Admiral Walsh announced that Elena would be offered opportunities to participate in advanced training development programs that would utilize her operational experience while keeping her in non-deployment status. These programs would involve developing curriculum for specialized training courses and providing consultation on equipment and tactical innovations. "We want to determine whether exceptional personnel can make meaningful contributions to military capability development without requiring continued exposure to operational risks," Walsh explained. Sergeant Rodriguez's experience and analytical capabilities make her an ideal candidate for this type of assignment. Hayes was designated as Elena's immediate supervisor for these new responsibilities, which would be implemented gradually to allow assessment of her interest and effectiveness in expanded roles. The arrangement would also provide continued monitoring of her adaptation to non-operational military service. The meeting concluded with agreements on specific steps for implementing the new personnel management approaches being tested through Elena's case. Hayes was directed to discuss the opportunities with Elena and assess her willingness to take on expanded responsibilities that would utilize her unique background. Flying back to his base, Hayes reflected on the remarkable scope of institutional interest in Elena's case. What had begun as routine personnel review had revealed her involvement in strategic-level policy discussions that could influence military personnel management for years to come. 2 days later, Hayes called Elena back to his office for a follow-up meeting. This conversation would be significantly different from their initial discussion, as Hayes now possessed complete understanding of Elena's exceptional service record and the institutional context surrounding her current assignment. Sergeant Rodriguez, thank you for returning to discuss some new opportunities that have become available, Hayes began, gesturing for Elena to take her usual seat. I want to start by acknowledging that your service record represents achievements that few soldiers could match under any circumstances.
Elena's expression shifted slightly, indicating awareness that Hayes now possessed more complete information about her background than had been apparent during their previous meeting.
Thank you, sir. I've been fortunate to serve where my skills were needed.
Hayes smiled at Elena's consistent preference for understated responses. Fortune had very little to do with your accomplishments, Sergeant.
Your record indicates sustained exceptional performance under conditions that would challenge any soldier. More importantly, you've maintained this performance while demonstrating the professionalism and character that exemplify the best aspects of military service. For the first time since Hayes had met her, Elena appeared genuinely surprised by the directness of his acknowledgement. Her carefully maintained composure wavered slightly, revealing what might have been relief at having her contributions recognized by someone in authority. I've been involved in discussions at the highest levels of military command about how to best utilize personnel with your exceptional capabilities, Hayes continued. There are opportunities available that would allow you to contribute to military effectiveness in new ways while maintaining the operational respite that your current assignment provides. Hayes outlined the training development programs and consultation roles that Elena could assume, emphasizing how her operational experience could benefit broader military capability development. The assignments would leverage her unique knowledge while allowing continued recovery from the psychological stresses of extended operational deployment. Elena listened carefully to the description of potential new responsibilities, asking thoughtful questions about expectations and requirements. Her interest appeared genuine, though she maintained the careful consideration that characterized all her responses to significant decisions. These opportunities sound challenging and meaningful, sir, Elena finally responded. I would be honored to contribute to training development and capability enhancement programs.
Hayes felt satisfaction at Elena's positive response. The new assignments would provide better utilization of her exceptional skills while supporting the military's broader goals of optimizing personnel management for specialized capabilities.
Excellent. We'll implement these responsibilities gradually, allowing you to maintain your current duties while taking on additional projects as they become available. I think you'll find that your operational experience provides perspectives that our curriculum developers have been missing.
As Elena prepared to leave, Hayes made one final observation. Sergeant Rodriguez, I want you to know that your service represents the highest standards of military excellence.
The contributions you've made, often under circumstances that can never be publicly acknowledged, have had strategic impact that extends far beyond individual missions. Elena stood and came to attention, but her expression had changed in a way that suggested the general's words had affected her more than she was comfortable showing.
Thank you, sir. That recognition means more than I can adequately express.
After Elena left, Hayes reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought him to understand one of the most exceptional soldiers he had encountered in 4 decades of military service. Elena Rodriguez represented capabilities that pushed the boundaries of what individual soldiers could achieve, while maintaining the character and professionalism that defined military service at its best. The story that had begun with routine weapons maintenance had revealed layers of achievement and dedication that few would ever fully comprehend. Elena's quiet competence masked contributions to military effectiveness that had influenced strategic outcomes and saved countless lives through precision that bordered on the impossible. Now, as military leadership worked to develop new approaches for managing exceptional personnel, Elena would help determine whether such remarkable individuals could successfully transition to roles that utilized their experience without requiring continued exposure to extreme operational risks. Her future would serve as a model for managing similar cases and optimizing military capability while protecting the welfare of those who served at the highest levels of performance and dedication. The general closed Elena's file, confident that whatever new challenges lay ahead, she would meet them with the same professionalism and excellence that had characterized her entire military career. Her story would continue to unfold in new directions, but the foundation of exceptional service and unwavering dedication would remain constant. Elena Rodriguez had proven that extraordinary capabilities could exist within ordinary military frameworks, maintained through discipline, professionalism, and genuine commitment to military values. Her legacy would influence military personnel policy for years to come while inspiring future soldiers to achieve excellence in service to their country.